Imagine standing under a vast, starry sky, feeling the weight of a promise that stretches across generations. That's where our journey begins. A man named Abram, living in a world filled with uncertainty, hears a voice that will change everything. What if I told you that this voice challenges him to leave everything behind? Family, home, security, gone just like that. Now, picture the tension in his heart. Would you have the courage to follow an unseen path, driven only by faith? Abram did. And with every step he took, he was not just moving forward. He was stepping into a divine narrative that would echo throughout history. As we unravel this tale, think about the moments of doubt, the tests of loyalty, and the profound impact of a single decision. What does it mean to trust in something greater when the road ahead is shrouded in mystery? Stay with me, because the twists and turns of Abram's life reveal powerful lessons about faith, sacrifice, and destiny. Each phase of his journey is a loop of challenges and triumphs, inviting us to reflect on our own paths. What if your own story is calling for a leap of faith? You know, the story of Abraham, or as he was first known, Abram, is quite the journey. It all kicks off in the book of Genesis, where we find this man living in a place called Ur of the Chaldeans. Imagine that, surrounded by the familiar comforts of home, he receives a divine call that would change everything. God tells Abram to pack his bags, leave his homeland, and venture into the unknown. Can you picture how daunting that must have been? Leaving everything behind. Friends, family, the very ground he walked on, just to follow a promise that was still veiled in mystery. As I think about it, there's something profoundly relatable about that moment. Who among us hasn't felt the urge to step outside our comfort zone? Abram was asked to trust in something greater than himself, to embark on a path without a clear destination. It's a leap of faith that many of us can only dream of taking. How often do we cling to our routines, afraid to venture into the unknown? Abram's journey teaches us about the courage it takes to follow a calling, even when the road ahead is shrouded in uncertainty. The promise of a new land, a future filled with possibility, must have stirred something deep within him. Imagine the conversations he must have had with his wife, Sarai. "Honey, pack your things. We're going on an adventure." The excitement mingled with fear must have been palpable. But Abram doesn't hesitate. He gathers his family and sets off, leaving behind the life he once knew for a promise yet to unfold. It's fascinating to consider how this simple act of obedience would lay the groundwork for generations to come. Abram's willingness to heed the call of God marks him as a pivotal figure in spiritual history. His journey wasn't just about geographical relocation. It was about spiritual transformation. And that's something worth reflecting on. Are we open to the calls in our lives, even when they seem to lead us into uncharted territory? In the end, Abram's story is one of hope and faith. He represents anyone who has ever felt the tug of destiny calling them forward. The path may be rocky, and the future uncertain, but it's that very leap into the unknown that opens the door to extraordinary possibilities. Isn't it amazing how one man's obedience could ripple through time, influencing countless lives and faiths? Now, let's talk about the covenant that God establishes with Abram. This isn't just a casual agreement. It's a profound commitment that sets the stage for everything that follows. God promises Abram that he will become the father of a great nation. Can you imagine hearing that promise? You, Abram, will have descendants as numerous as the stars in the sky. It's a promise so grand it's almost hard to wrap your head around it. This covenant is marked by a tangible sign: circumcision. It's an interesting choice, isn't it? A physical reminder of a spiritual promise. Every time Abram and his descendants would look at this mark, they'd remember the sacred commitment made between them and God. It's a beautiful illustration of how faith and practice intertwine. God didn't just want a verbal agreement. He desired a relationship that was experiential, something that would be felt and remembered. Abram's reaction to this covenant speaks volumes. Instead of questioning, he accepts this promise with a heart full of faith. It's a powerful reminder of the importance of trust in our own lives. How often do we hesitate, unsure if we're worthy of such promises? But here's Abram, a man with flaws and uncertainties, stepping into the role of the patriarch of a nation simply because he chose to believe. It's a lesson in humility and faith that resonates even today. As I ponder this covenant, I can't help but think about its implications for us. What does it mean to be in a covenant relationship with God? It's not just about receiving blessings. It's about a commitment to live in accordance with that promise. Abram's journey is a blueprint for us to follow, teaching us that our faith is something we actively participate in. It's a partnership, a dance between divine promise and human response. In this light, the covenant becomes more than just a historical event. It's an invitation to all of us who seek a deeper connection with the divine. It calls us to remember that we are part of something much larger than ourselves. Just as Abram's covenant was a pivotal moment in history, we too are invited to step into our own covenants with God, embracing the promises that await us. The life of Abram wasn't all sunshine and rainbows, was it? He faced numerous challenges that tested his faith time and time again. One of the first major trials he encountered was a severe famine in the land that God promised him. Can you imagine? Here he is, following God's directive, and suddenly he's faced with a crisis. It's a stark reminder that a divine calling doesn't exempt us from life's hardships. During this famine, Abram makes a significant decision to journey down to Egypt for sustenance. This is where things get a bit complicated, as he fears for his own safety and lies about Sarai being his sister instead of his wife. It's fascinating to see how even the most faithful can falter under pressure. We all have moments where fear clouds our judgment, don't we? Abram's story reminds us that faith is a journey, often marked by missteps and moments of doubt. Another major challenge comes with the separation from his nephew, Lot. As their flocks grew, so did the tension between their people. Abram, in a show of generosity and humility, allows Lot to choose the land he wants. This decision speaks volumes about his character. It's a powerful lesson in selflessness and the importance of prioritizing relationships over material gain. How often do we cling to our possessions, unwilling to share or let go? Abram's example challenges us to reevaluate our own priorities. Then there's the heart-wrenching moment when God promises Abram a son, despite his old age. This promise seems impossible, and you can almost feel Abram's doubt creeping in. The waiting becomes a trial of its own, as the years pass without the fulfillment of that promise. Yet, through it all, Abram continues to trust. It's a testament to his unwavering faith, a reminder that some promises take time and testing to come to fruition. And let's not forget the ultimate test of faith when God asks him to sacrifice his beloved son, Isaac. Imagine the turmoil within Abram as he grapples with this command. It's a heart-wrenching scenario that questions the very nature of faith and obedience. Yet, in the face of unimaginable pain, Abram prepares to follow through, demonstrating a level of trust that is both inspiring and humbling. His trials teach us that faith is often forged in the fire of challenges, and it's through these experiences that our spiritual character is shaped. After all those trials and tribulations, we finally arrive at the birth of Isaac, the child of promise. This moment is pivotal, not just for Abram and Sarai, but for the entire narrative of faith and covenant. Isaac's arrival fulfills God's promise to Abram in a way that must have felt like a miracle. After years of waiting, laughter, and perhaps a bit of skepticism, God's word comes to fruition. Can you imagine the joy and relief that must have filled their hearts? Isaac isn't just a child. He is the embodiment of the covenant, the next link in a chain that would extend through generations. His life represents hope and continuity. Abram's legacy is no longer just a distant promise. It's now tangible, living, and breathing in the form of his son. It's a beautiful moment that connects the past with the future, reminding us that our actions today can have lasting impacts on those who come after us. As I think about the relationship between Abram and Isaac, I'm struck by the depth of their bond. It's not just about father and son, it's about the shared journey of faith. Abram had to navigate his own challenges, and now he has the privilege of passing down that legacy to Isaac. Can you imagine the conversations they must have had? The stories of faith, the lessons learned, and the promises made? It's a rich tapestry of relationship and covenant that we can all learn from. Isaac's role as the heir to the promise also brings forth the theme of inheritance. It makes me reflect on what we inherit, not just material possessions but spiritual legacies. What kind of faith are we passing down to the next generation? Are we nurturing a sense of trust in God's promises? Abram's story encourages us to be intentional about the legacies we create, ensuring that the next generation understands the depth and richness of their faith heritage. In a way, Isaac stands at the crossroads of faith and fulfillment. His life sets the stage for the unfolding of God's plan, reminding us that each generation plays a role in a much larger story. As we consider our own lives, we are invited to think about how we contribute to this ongoing narrative of faith, what promises we embrace, what legacies we build, and how we continue the story that began long ago with a man named Abram. When I think about the story of Abraham, one of the first things that comes to my mind is the birth of Isaac. This moment is not just a personal milestone for Abraham and Sarah. It's the very crux of the divine promise. God had told Abraham that he would become the father of a great nation, but let's be honest, that all seemed a bit far-fetched when he was pushing 100 years old and Sarah was well past her childbearing years. Yet, against all odds, Isaac was born. Can you imagine the joy and disbelief that must have filled their hearts? It's like the universe turned on its head, defying all logic. Isaac's arrival brings a sense of hope and continuity to the narrative. He wasn't just a child. He was the living embodiment of God's promise. Abraham's faith had been tested repeatedly, but finally, here was the tangible proof that God keeps his word. It's fascinating to think about how the relationship between Abraham and Isaac became a cornerstone for the lineage that would follow. Isaac wasn't just another name. He was the heir, the one through whom the promises would continue to unfold. You can almost feel the weight of that legacy on his tiny shoulders. As Isaac grew, He became the focal point of not just Abraham's hopes but also of the covenant that God had established. It's like the baton in a relay race. Abraham had run his leg, and now it was Isaac's turn to carry the promise forward. This relationship between father and son sets the stage for what's to come. The bond they shared was not just familial but also spiritual, as they both were part of a divine plan that transcended their personal lives. I often wonder how those conversations must have gone, especially when Abraham would recount his own journey of faith to Isaac, instilling in him the importance of holding on to the promises of God. However, the story doesn't just revolve around a happy family. The continuation of the promise also comes with its own set of challenges. Isaac would face his own trials, and the path wouldn't always be smooth. Yet, the essence of the promise remained intact. As I think about it, it's almost poetic. The difficulties they encountered only served to deepen their faith and reliance on God. In many ways, that's a reflection of our own lives, isn't it? The challenges we face can often lead to a stronger connection with the divine. In the grand narrative of faith, Isaac's role is pivotal. He might not have had the same dramatic encounters as Abraham, but his existence is crucial for the unfolding of the story. Isaac is the bridge between Abraham's legacy and the future generations that would carry the promise further, including Jacob and the 12 tribes of Israel. When I reflect on this, it's a reminder that our lives, too, are part of a bigger picture, where each of us plays a role in a story that is far greater than ourselves. Now, let's shift gears a bit and talk about a fascinating episode in Abraham's life: his intercession for Sodom and Gomorrah. This story really shows a different side of Abraham, one that highlights his deep concern for justice and mercy. When God revealed his plan to destroy these cities because of their wickedness, Abraham didn't just shrug and walk away. No, he stepped up, and he began to plead for the people. I mean, how many of us would have the courage to question God like that? It's compelling to think about the negotiation that took place. Abraham starts small, asking if God would spare the cities if there were 50 righteous people. Then he keeps going, lowering the number down to 10. Each time, God agrees to Abraham's requests, showing that he is indeed a God of mercy. This back and forth is a powerful example of how intercession works. It's not just about asking for something. It's about engaging in a relationship with God, bringing the concerns of the world into dialogue. It makes me reflect on my own life. How often do I stand in the gap for others? What strikes me is Abraham's boldness. He was not afraid to confront God about the fate of these cities. It's a reminder that prayer isn't just a passive activity. It's an active engagement where we can express our concerns and hopes. I sometimes think we underestimate the power of intercession. Abraham's willingness to plead for the people of Sodom and Gomorrah shows that he was not just concerned for his own well-being or that of his family. He had a heart for the greater community. It's a call for us to step outside our comfort zones and advocate for those who may not have a voice. What's also interesting is how this moment reflects Abraham's understanding of God's character. He knew that God was just but also merciful. This duality is something that many of us grapple with in our own faith journeys. How can a just God be merciful at the same time? Abraham's intercession gives us a glimpse into that mystery. He wasn't just asking for leniency. He was appealing to God's nature, seeking a balance between justice and compassion. It's a beautiful illustration of how our understanding of God can deepen through our experiences with Him. Ultimately, the story of Abraham's intercession teaches us about the importance of standing up for what is right. While we may not have the same influence as Abraham, we can still be advocates in our own communities. Whether it's speaking out against injustice or praying for those in need, our actions can have a ripple effect. Just like Abraham, we can engage with God on behalf of others, bridging that gap with our prayers and fostering a sense of collective responsibility. When I think about Abraham, I can't help but feel a deep sense of respect for the legacy he left behind. He is often referred to as the father of three major monotheistic faiths: Judaism, Christianity, and Islam. This title is not just a casual label. It carries weight, representing the profound impact he had on the spiritual landscape of the world. Each of these faiths traces its roots back to him, weaving a rich tapestry of belief that has shaped cultures, societies, and individual lives for millennia. It strikes me as remarkable how one man's journey can resonate across different epochs and civilizations. Abraham's legacy is not merely about religious texts or doctrines. It's about the values and principles he embodied. His unwavering faith in God, even when faced with insurmountable challenges, serves as a cornerstone for these traditions. I often find myself reflecting on the essence of faith that he demonstrated. It wasn't a blind faith, but rather a dynamic relationship with the divine, characterized by dialogue, questioning, and ultimately, trust. This model of faith is something that many of us strive to emulate in our own lives, regardless of our spiritual backgrounds. Moreover, Abraham's descendants, Isaac, Jacob, and the 12 patriarchs, each played their part in this ongoing narrative. Each generation built upon the foundations he laid, contributing their unique stories while remaining anchored in the covenant that God established with Abraham. It's fascinating to consider how the family dynamics and struggles depicted in these narratives mirror the complexities of our own relationships today. The trials faced by his descendants, from sibling rivalries to issues of power and leadership, are not so dissimilar from the challenges we encounter in modern family life. The concept of lineage also extends beyond the biological. Abraham's influence can be seen in the moral and ethical teachings that arose from these traditions. Each faith carries forward the essence of what it means to live a righteous life, to seek justice, and to care for the marginalized. All principles that Abraham exemplified. When I engage with these teachings, I can't help but feel a connection to Abraham as a foundational figure in a long line of seekers striving for a deeper understanding of the divine. In reflecting on Abraham's legacy, I am reminded that it is not just about the past. His story is a living narrative that continues to inspire millions around the globe. The values he championed, faith, obedience, and compassion, remain relevant today. They challenge us to engage with our own beliefs and to consider how we can contribute to the ongoing story of humanity in a way that honors his legacy. One of the most poignant moments in Abraham's life occurs when he intercedes for the cities of Sodom and Gomorrah. This episode highlights not just his personal relationship with God, but also underscores the moral weight of leadership. Abraham's plea for these cities reveals his deep sense of justice and mercy, qualities that resonate with many of us today. Imagining myself in his place, I wonder how I would respond upon learning of impending doom for places filled with people, some of whom might be innocent. Abraham's negotiation with God is a remarkable display of courage and conviction. He starts by asking, "Will you sweep away the righteous with the wicked?" This question strikes at the heart of the matter, the balance between justice and mercy. It's compelling to think about how often we find ourselves in similar dilemmas, advocating for those who are marginalized or unfairly judged. Abraham's willingness to stand in the gap and plead for others is a powerful reminder of our responsibility to seek justice, even when it feels uncomfortable. As the conversation unfolds, Abraham's persistence becomes evident. He starts with 50 righteous people and continues to negotiate down to 10. This process isn't just about numbers. It reflects a deep understanding of human nature and community. I often ponder how many times I have remained silent in the face of injustice or failed to advocate for those who cannot speak for themselves. Abraham's example challenges me to be more vocal and engaged in the issues that matter. Interestingly, this narrative also invites reflection on the nature of divine justice. God's willingness to listen to Abraham's pleas demonstrates a relational aspect of the divine that many of us yearn for today. It's comforting to know that we can approach God with our concerns and that our voices matter in the grand scheme of things. This interplay between divine authority and human advocacy offers a nuanced perspective on how we relate to the world around us. Ultimately, Abraham's intercession for Sodom and Gomorrah serves as a blueprint for our own moral engagement in society. It encourages us to ask tough questions about justice, mercy, and the responsibility we hold for one another. This story challenges me to consider how I can be an advocate for those in need, embodying the spirit of compassion that Abraham so clearly demonstrated. The narrative around Abraham is inextricably linked to the promise of continuity, particularly through his son Isaac. The birth of Isaac is not just a personal milestone for Abraham and Sarah. It represents the fulfillment of God's promise and the continuation of the covenant. As I reflect on this, I am struck by the layers of hope and expectation that surround Isaac's arrival. Known for their struggles with infertility, Abraham and Sarah's joy is palpable when they finally hold their son. It's a reminder that patience, faith, and divine timing often go hand in hand. Isaac, as the heir to Abraham's legacy, carries the weight of his father's faith. This isn't merely about biological succession. It's about the transfer of spiritual responsibility. I often consider how the values we hold dear are passed down through generations, shaping the beliefs and actions of those who come after us. In the same way, Isaac becomes a vessel for the promise that God made to Abraham, ensuring that the covenant remains alive and impactful. The relationship between Abraham and Isaac is fraught with complexity, from the joyful moments of laughter to the heart-wrenching trials they face together. When I think about the story of the near sacrifice of Isaac, I can't help but feel a mix of dread and admiration. It's a moment that tests the very fabric of their relationship and Abraham's faith. This tension serves as a powerful reminder of the sacrifices we must sometimes make in our own lives and the profound trust that is required to follow a higher calling. Furthermore, Isaac's life is a testament to the continuity of divine promises. His experiences, from finding a wife to raising his own children, echo the themes of faith and perseverance that characterize Abraham's story. This interconnectedness among generations is something I find deeply inspiring. It encourages me to think about my own legacy and the ways in which my life can be a source of strength and guidance for those who follow. Ultimately, the promise of continuity found in Isaac's story reinforces the idea that our actions, choices, and faith can have lasting implications. It serves as an encouragement to nurture relationships and instill values that will positively impact future generations. In this way, I find myself challenged to reflect on the legacy I am creating and the promises I am making in my own life. As we wrap up our journey through Abraham's incredible story, Let's take a moment to reflect on the lessons we've uncovered. Abraham wasn't just a man of faith. He was a pioneer who faced immense challenges and doubts. Can you imagine leaving everything you know behind, simply because you believed in a promise? That's the kind of courage we all can aspire to. Now, think about your own life. What promises are you holding on to? What mountains are you willing to climb? Just like Abraham did. Remember, even in moments of uncertainty, Abraham's story teaches us that faith can lead to unimaginable blessings. And here's a thought. How do you think Abraham's legacy impacts us today? His willingness to trust and obey has inspired countless generations. So, what about you? Are you ready to step out in faith, even when the road ahead seems unclear? Before we dive into more stories, I want to hear from you. Share your thoughts in the comments. What part of Abraham's journey resonated with you the most? And what story should we explore next? Your insights are what make this community truly special. Keep that faith burning, and let's keep this conversation going.